Hey folks, Jim from Slick Audio. Long time no freaking speak. Um, I'm back from my little surgical expedition, and more about that at another day. So it went very well. So wanted to talk a brief video today. I'm going to try to keep it brief. Small studio acoustic treatment is the topic today. Obviously, large recording studios, that's a whole different world, and you should be hiring a professional to do what you need to do. And medium-sized studio or project studio, if you can afford to hire a professional, I would highly recommend you do so. If you can't afford to hire a professional, then you're going to be prepared to spend some money on some tools to be able to get the job done. So since that's not the topic, let's go over to the small studio acoustic treatment. So yeah, a little cheat sheet here. It makes it easier to think. So first thing you got to do, obviously, is set up your room. This is a small studio, and I've set up my room as best I could. And let's face it, most of the time we don't always have the choice of putting absolutely everything where we want to put it. Sometimes we're forced to put it where we have to put it because of windows or what have you. And that's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. So, with that in mind, put it in the most ergonomic place that you can. And when I say put the pieces, your console, your computer, your whatever you're working with, a keyboard, wherever you can. That makes perfect sense. So now that we're past that, we're assuming that you've already done that. So now let's talk about what's the point of doing acoustic treatment to your room. Rooms out of the box, no pun intended, rooms are boxy. In boxy rooms, you tend to get a lot of reflections, side-to-side reflections, top to bottom reflections, front to back reflections, and it creates a very unnatural sounding reverb. Even though it's natural sounding reverb, it's just wrong. So certain frequencies are going to be missing and lacking. Even though your monitors are right in front of you, you could say, well, geez, I'm listening to them, 3 feet in front of my head. It's still, the room makes a huge difference in how those speakers sound. So the whole idea of a set of studio monitors is we want to get them to sound as flat as possible. So 20 to 20K, dead freaking flat. And that's on purpose. We don't want the speakers coloring the sound, otherwise how are you supposed to mix? Well, we don't want your room coloring the sound either, otherwise how are you supposed to mix? So with that in mind, you've got to do some type of testing and room treatment. Look, if you can't afford some testing, at least do some room treatment, and guessing at something is better than doing nothing at all. That's obviously up to your budget and your tolerances of what you think is acceptable or not acceptable. If you're hearing perfect and doing perfect mixes in the room that you're in, well then, let a sleeping dog lie, right? So by all means, this is not an end-all, be-all, instructional video. It's meant to give you a guide, not exact. So let's talk about the types of treatments that you can do. So first one is called diffusion. Diffusion is usually used in larger rooms, not necessarily smaller, although it can be. Diffusion means you're going to diffuse audio. You're not going to capture it and absorb it. We're going to talk about absorption next. You want to actually make it reflect, but you want to diffuse it. And what do I mean by that? So if I have a flat board sitting in here right in front of me and I play a sound source, it's going to bounce, no matter where it hits on this board, it's going to bounce pretty much at the same angle or relative angle. So we'll assume the source is right, put my cheat sheet down, right in front, and it bounces off, and it's just going to be, again, this weird sounding and no different than your wall, right? So the whole idea of diffusion is you'll see like weird looking wooden things with you know, different sizes of wood squares or what have you sticking out. RLX and a pile of companies like that make these things, and they're not cheap. And you can get them out of exotic woods. I think RLX makes theirs out of bamboo. And there's a lot of good companies making them, and they're usually $400+ per panel. When I say plus, I mean like, you know, 400, 800, 1600 a panel. And the whole idea is when it hits these different surfaces, it sends them off in different areas, so it diffuses the sound as opposed to just reflecting it. So that's diffusion. So now let's talk about absorption, which is, for you small studio owners, that is the best means to go by. So chances are you're going to have drywall walls or paneled walls if you still have a paneled wall. And anyways, they're very, very noisy, very loud, very bouncy, and even if you have a picture or two on there, it makes it just as bad. So the whole idea is to put diffusion panels up, and you'll have seen them already. They look, as a matter of fact, Glenn Fricker did a one about how not to use egg crates for sound deadening. So he just did a little video here this past week. And if you don't know Glenn at Spectre Sound Studios, look him up on YouTube. He's got a great channel, great guy, and very knowledgeable. So he just did a little article in this as well. But so mine's a little more, you know, just slightly different push. Anyway, so you know, again, I'll use RLX again. I'm not it's just top of my mind right now, guys. But you can get panels from them, you know, that are a dozen panels for, you know, $300-400. You can look actually on Amazon and get, you know, 24 panels for $50. I mean, I understand you get what you pay for, you know, most of the time. So, but look, if you have a $50 budget, then guess what? That's a great thing to at least try and to experiment. And a cheap way to test is to be able to run pink noise through your speakers. And there are apps for your phone, believe it or not, iPhone and Android. I use SPL Sound Tools, it's called. Great application. It costs some money, but it's a great application, and you can get a spectrum analyzer to like it. At least you'll get an idea of, you know, what how flat your room is. So I mean, in the spectrum analyzer, with pink noise coming out, I mean, your room should be fairly flat. So if you see huge dips or whatever, that's when you start moving your panels around. So again, that's a very uneducated way of doing it. You know, it's more of a poke and hope and trying to find it, but it's a very cheap way of doing it. And at least then you're getting some degree of measurement, and you're getting some degree of better result than what you had before. So is it a perfect solution? Hell no, but it's a solution. So I'm trying to explain for small studios, because again, if you don't have the budget for it, and you only got $50 or $100 to spend, well, there you go. By the time you purchase the analyzer, and by the time you purchase, you know, a handful of tiles for the room, you spent your $100, and you're good to go. So now, if you want to take it a couple of steps further, and I need my cheat sheet for this. So you know, again, sticking. Oh, there's one other type. Bass traps is another thing. Bass traps are foam. Mostly foam, and they go in corners of a room. Corners of a room can create a bass trap. So, and what I mean by a bass trap is there's a thing in audio called standing waves. So, when bass frequencies are most prone to it because they're larger frequencies. So what'll happen is without getting too ridiculously technical, for some strange reason, and actually it's not strange, there's physics behind it, but again, not getting into it. You know, you can hear bass very well. It's over-exaggerated in corners. So it tends to get trapped, you know, in corners. and over exaggerate, so which can create anomalies in the room and when you're listening. Lack of bass and over exaggeration of bass. So by putting bass traps in the rooms and absorption of, you know, you can help eliminate that, or at least keep it under control. Again, very simplistic. So there's some great acoustic analysis tools. RLX actually makes one now. I use them again, yes, for I think for $499, $500. And it's kind of a self-contained USB stick with the software and a microphone that's calibrated. That's about one of the least expensive ones I've seen to date. I don't know if it works or not. I can only assume that it does. A fairly reputable company. Waves makes the tracked system, TRACT. I actually have used that here on my own. And that's a calibration plug-in set of software. And a set of tools that you actually have to use. It's a little complex, but you know, it's all in that same price range. And then there's a program actually that's free. It's donationware, so it means you're supposed to donate to these people. But it's called REW, Room Acoustic Software. So REW, I just actually discovered it today. Man, you know, it looks like a pretty kick-ass little suite of software to be able to do some room analysis. Yeah. You still need a calibrated microphone, and of course an interface to run that in. I'm assuming you already have an interface, but if you look up REW, you can go on there and they actually sell a microphone that's very reasonably priced, calibrated mic, and then you can use that over and over again. So you know, that certainly is a tool that would save you a lot of money and get you real results that you can, you know, visually see. And they're tested results as opposed to the guessing game results. But again, going back to square one, if you want to try the guessing game routine, you know, it's better than doing absolutely nothing and have all these wacky sound waves flying all over the place. So I know that was a very overly simplified video, but I wanted to make it overly simplified for those people who are just kind of getting into it and want to experiment and understand. The better, my conclusion here is, the better your room sounds, the better your monitors are going to sound, and the better the mixes that you're going to make. And especially if you get into mastering, it's a huge thing. The room has to be tuned, which just means flattened and made very acoustically neutral, and to work well with your monitors, studio monitors. If you change studio monitors, you are going to need to do your tests all over again. I'm not saying that they're going to be off. I mean, it still could be relatively on, but you know, it's still worth testing again through a new set of monitors. So that should about do it for the day. My words of wisdom for the small entry studio owner. And again, I'm talking small, you know, bedroom style studio, real tiny. If you have a project studio and you plan on bringing people in to make money, I would highly recommend that you spend some money on tools or hire a professional to come in and give you the recommendations of what should be done, and they can do the work as well. There's a lot of them out there, and some very, very, very good ones. So by all means, if you are super serious about this, you ought to be talking to a professional, as opposed to you know, just winging it on your own. But if you don't have the budget for a professional, you know, and you have to do it on your own because it's the only way to get things up and running and started, then at least pick up some tools like I had mentioned before, the REW, or to get some good sound absorption material, or diffusion if it's required, and bass traps if required. And again, the software will it's not going to tell you, put a bass trap here. You know, you're going to have to move stuff around and really do some experimentation. It's, you know, acoustic engineers, acoustical engineers have, you know, degrees to do this properly. Or they've at least done it for a long time and they've gotten good. So don't expect to do it overnight and have it sound perfect. Yes, you might get lucky, but chances are you're not going to. But that doesn't mean it's not going to sound better than it did before. So doing something is better than doing nothing. Hope that helped. And this is Jim from Slick Audio. Remember, we will be at Summer NAMM. Don't know the booth number yet because they haven't told us what booth we're going to be at. Still waiting impatiently, Mr. Impatient here. And we are going to be at Winter NAMM 2020. And I do know the booth number. I think it's 14019. There's a 14019.
14.
Yeah, so 14019. So we have the same booths we had last year. And it's going to be pretty much the same setup. So it's 20 feet wide by only 5 feet deep, but it actually worked out well for us. But we're going to have some monster monitors next year. You know, it's going to be cool. So yeah, you know, come and see us at the NAMM show. If you find that you're in the area and you don't have a ticket to the NAMM show, you'd like to go as our guest, we have a very, very limited supply. Contact us and maybe we'll be nice and maybe we'll give you a ticket in the door. A pass, a ticket in the door. Maybe not. Maybe we'll just say, I don't know. Just depends on how nice we feel. Kidding, but yeah, extremely limited. So you know, it's and obviously we want to, you know, if you're serious about being there, and obviously we'll expect you to come and visit us and, you know, talk about us and say hi. And I don't mean bad things either. So cheers. We'll give you another video and an update hopefully next week. It's just been kind of slow getting going past surgery date. So. But we are back making videos again, and look for another one coming soon. All right, man, be good. Cheers.